welcome once again. Great to see you all and really good turnout. So yeah, I thought I'd put together a few sort of left field sort of tips on symmetry, some of my perspectives, give you a little bit of a insight into how we approach projects, and I've tried where possible to kind of link it back to the topic, which actually there's quite some nice sort of synergies going on. So yeah, 93 on symmetry, so it also sort of rhymes as well, which I quite liked. So if you've not heard of us, we're based in Sheffield and we've been running about 15 years. My business partner Tim, who's upstairs beavering away, we got together and set that up actually when I finished uni in 2005. Tim's 10 years senior than me, so yeah, I always come out the youngest, so that's pretty good. And we work across interior architecture, so as you see here, like the great interiors that we've produced. Brand as well, so the bits that you've seen for like the Mowbray, and when you came in through the doors there, all the branding and stuff. So we're really well known for kind of merging the two disciplines together. And then of course we've got our web arm, digital arm, online life, however you want to call it, so people can see in from outside and then come and find us. And that can be said for all of our projects as well. So yeah, over the last 15 years, we've worked with some amazing people, visionaries, great brands, entrepreneurs, and kind of worked all over the world. And that's getting more so every day, which is great. So just to give you a little snapshot of our clients. So pretty diverse, so I'll just pick a few out and talk to you about those. So obviously J-Wing's based in Sheffield as well, and pretty stunning office there. That was much more an interior job, but we've also worked with Warp Records, who are doing the new, it's the Jamie film, which is pretty cool. So they've got some really awesome offices up in Park Hill that we did. Crafted Projects is a new client for us up in Newcastle. Again, it'll be all brand online, hopefully, if they're listening. And interiors, all the universities as well, we kind of get involved with them. We've done quite a bit of work with Next to transform their men's denim wear, shoe wear. Some great impacts on sales as well, which is great. Hotel groups like the Zeta Group, PILGRM Hotel you might have heard of, coffee brands like Dartwoods up in Huddersfield, big sort of fast food as well like Ginsters. So yeah, there's a pretty broad spectrum of work. So and yeah, we like to think we've got a genuine enthusiasm to create the extraordinary. So when we start thinking about that and symmetry, I'll sort of show you what I mean. So I've got 3 chapters to kind of work through. First one being this idea of sort of eyes open. So when we start a job, we love to think really broad and look broad. We look at other countries, other brands. There's a lot out there to kind of take on board. And so this sort of, in the context of symmetry, we start working our way through some slides, which I'll show you. So the word isn't symmetrical for a start, was my first observation about symmetry. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird one to kind of line up in terms of how I've done it anyway. So yeah, I started questioning, what does that say about the integrity of the word and the importance of it? So again, you'll notice I'm sort of coming at it from like a challenger perspective, so I don't just take it at face value. So obviously there's some beautiful things that have been created with symmetry in mind, symmetry in practice. So again, this wonderful roof structure, which again, I could argue is that symmetry, maybe how the cameraman or person's taken the shot. But yeah, symmetry allows us to create patterns and have that nice sense of repetition, and is a great tool for decorative application. Optical effects as well, you can get some pretty great things going on there. And yeah, starts to sort of lend itself to the practice of like geometry and mathematics and order and formulas and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, there's some pretty clever thinking that's gone into that roof, which is great. It also, I think, adds a sense of balance to things. So this is a picture from Kettle's Yard, which is down in Cambridge, which popped into the end of December. And it's a really wonderful place because you start to appreciate actually the value of asymmetry as well. So as a sort of scene, it feels really balanced, but actually the objects in there are not all the same, and that's really its strength as an interior, but it also feels kind of pretty harmonious, which is great, and it looks great too. So there's some nice sort of lessons there to learn from symmetry. So structure. So this is like an example of brickwork and block work. So yeah, I kind of think having some framework's great, but what about the cracks? Like, what about the bits in between? So like when you're looking around at the brickwork here, all the mortar's sort of spewing out from the bricks. It's not perfect. Things aren't sort of straight and really drawn out. So like what happens with symmetry there? Like you've got imperfection. So the bit I like to think about is sort of the bits in between. So is there something really fascinating there about symmetry? Even on that beautiful roof you saw on pattern, there will be imperfections. And does that offer us something to think about? And then symmetry and sort of that sense of wellness. So again, building on that idea of balance and harmony. So yeah, it kind of feels good in the mind when you've got order and structure and framework. You can feel quite calm, and maybe that sort of leads to a nice sense of well-being and balance. But then you've also got like power, which is quite a big topic. So I've picked out a Roman structure, and obviously you can see, I mean, I'll give it the fact it's had a bit of time stood there, so it's not quite perfect now, like the roof, for instance, on the right hand side. But in theory, it was all about this symbol of strength and power, is what I'm taking from it, and that sense of sort of dominance and knowledge and ownership. So how does that kind of make us feel? Like, do we feel quite happy when we look at that? Obviously we can now because the Romans have gone, but we can appreciate it for other values. But back then when you saw that for the first time, you'd have been pretty much in awe and maybe felt a bit intimidated as to what this sort of powerful thing was in front of you. So yeah, are we on a path for perfection as well, which is a bit of a sort of unsettling idea, I think, in some ways. So that's a quick view at symmetry. Obviously there's lots of other topics we can talk about, and I haven't done any maths there either. So chapter 2. So thinking different. So again, building on where we've come from. So we've kind of seen all these things. Now what do we do with them? So I quite liked the fact it was a bit like Symmetry, which sounds a bit like symmetry, and questioning, well, do we like things that are the same? Like, I mean, I'll be honest, I quite like going into a shop and buying like the same strawberry trifle each time, but technically it's a bit different every time. So yeah. And like when you take two people like myself and Tim, two designers, two guys, you've got almost two of the same thing, but when you add those together, I think you've also got the opportunity to create something new. So obviously the letter 2 is not symmetrical, but you could use it in a repeat pattern. So building on this idea of creating something new, and from two of the same, you actually get something different. And I think difference is pretty great. So again, we've drawn a little odd tree shape here, which shows that idea of symmetry. Again, on a very simple level. But what happens when you start introducing like a bit of challenge, a bit of change, a bit of asymmetry into that? And yeah, maybe you get a few thumbs up. So things are okay actually. Difference might represent innovation. So because you're thinking a bit differently or there's some imperfection, it allows actually for change of perspective. And for us working in design and on brand, difference is what people want to pay for. They don't want to be the same, and that comes down to then building equity, which is worth and value. So when you create something different like this place, it's then worth something to someone on many different levels. And I think difference is progressive. So yeah, there's a lot of challenge, a lot of shifting of thinking there, but it is all about moving forward in some way. So I've given you a little example, which is a bit bizarre, but everyone has experienced a fork at one point in their life. So we've drawn that on a sort of 2D flat perspective. And again, it has a wonderful sense of symmetry running through that down the middle. But when we shift that fork round, you actually experience a lot more, and sort of changing the axis or the axis of symmetry has then created a product that's a lot more useful than something that's flat. Like you can actually scoop your food up, and it works and it feels good to use. So by changing the dimension, it challenges our approach and creates innovation. So even on really simple things like every day, I think that sort of adds a case to challenge symmetry and just think about things from different perspectives and angles. Very basic, I appreciate. So yeah, back to us. So again, no two projects are the same, and no two people in the team, whoever's working on it, are the same. So the outcomes are always going to be different, even if you've got this sort of culture in the office of delivering design thinking. Everyone's coming at it from all different angles. So that's pretty great. And how we turn a project on its head is what makes 93 unique to work with. So I've got some examples that I'll show you. So in summary of that little chapter, a little bit damning really for Symmetry and 93. And like I've just put together like a few words we've heard over the years. So things like I found it in a catalogue, and we're not really a catalogue company. So again, the projects I'll show you will demonstrate that while some things obviously need to be bought from Screwfix or other brands, we actually create a lot of stuff. So like the chandelier, for instance, in the Mowbray, and these wall lights, all repurposed, and you can't buy that. You can buy the bits, but it's all about how it actually gels together. And yeah, clients come to us because they don't want the ordinary, and they don't want to be me too either. So there's maybe some things on there that if you guys are in the design industry, you sort of hear or recognize as well. So yeah, we're not really all about symmetry, I don't think, here. So thinking about that, and I was going to include a little slide on this, but this idea of sort of dovetailing I hear sometimes, of how two bits obviously come together and form that nice sort of lock, and it's strong. And yeah, there's some nice like metaphor there, but actually I think our dovetailing is more like this. So you've got essentially a wonderful piece of artwork, and it's all about how these elements, so the red, the blue, the yellow, whatever we want to call them as metaphors, so interior, brand and web, actually come together. It's very sort of unique and quite, well, not messy, but it all kind of joins together, less regimented than a jigsaw and less regimented than a dovetail. So yeah, that explains why I've got that rather bright piece in the background. So yeah, a lot of individual parts that come together to then work. And again, this is a great place to experience that variety of unique parts. So a few of you might be familiar with the chimney house, which is where we actually started back in, well, we sort of moved in, I think, 2009-ish. 2010. But as you can see here, this is like our sister venue, and all the bits in here are from all over the place, and they come together much like Kettle's Yard in a way to create that sort of harmony and that really lovely environment that people feel relaxed in. But actually, symmetry wise, I would argue it's more asymmetric. There's a lot of imperfection there, a lot of variety and a lot of texture and experience that the building sort of emits when you're in there. And we often have a lot of people say, you know, wow, I've had such a great day today and our whole team's felt more creative, as opposed to a sort of white box with strip lights. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, just to give you an insight into that. So we've also done some brochure work for the Chimney House. Obviously we need to promote ourselves, but yeah, people have a great time. The photography looks really strong. The words as well that we write with the help of Sally, the photography, the printing of it. So there's a whole load of things that we do to then bring them together to give people a picture of what we're about. And then when we got this place about 3 years ago, it was a wreck. So we've spent a long time doing it up and creating this. And again, you might say, well, actually a wonderful sense of symmetry on the front, but again, I would argue there's not so much symmetry at times, and it is more asymmetric, like just the way things are off on angles, and even its context into the street is not the same. So yeah, we do live in a world where variety and variation is all around us all the time. And then just to give you a view of upstairs, so directly above you is our office, and yeah, it's where two teams work, brand and interior, and yeah, so that's a really great space. And again, not a lot of symmetry going on there, but it's where we're really creative, and it works for us. Some of you might have heard the PILGRM. Some of you might have stayed in the PILGRM. Has anyone been down? Yeah, a few nods. So that's pretty great. And again, a very bespoke job. So we worked on interior, digital website, and brand as well. So the owner, Jason, wanted something really strong, didn't know what it would look like. And after a short conversation, I kind of already had in my mind what it would be and how it would look. So again, there's a nice harmony there between the letter shapes and the forms, but there's not much symmetry going on. It's pretty different, pretty unique. So just to give you a bit of context, so on the right-hand side, we've got a piece of the building through all the trees in Paddington. And you can see how much of a hodgepodge the building architecture is already. So when you start getting in behind those facades and into the corridors, into the rooms, into the public spaces, very difficult to tie all that through, and because it's just so unique. So yeah, we actually redid the shop front there, where you're coming off the street, and again, it has a wonderful sense of balance and order, but isn't that symmetrical, but it works so well. And then the lounge, which is a fabulous room to be in, and again, you'll probably notice I've tried to position that line down the floor into the middle just to demonstrate this point, but look how random everything else is. I mean, all of these pieces we've made in here, or found, and look how asymmetric it is and how great it is. And yeah, to see people in there and enjoy that space and that freedom just to be in that really cool environment that's not sort of rigid and fixed, it's got great freedom, is fabulous. So yeah, it celebrated its first birthday in November. And what's great to see is the owners just added another level of objects and pieces, and the plants have grown, and it's just become loads more like brilliant. Which is again down to like the quality of the materials that we add in. So like the rich wood floor is just going to be there forever. So yeah, lovely room. So just some little bits on the rooms themselves. Again, I should have put in a bigger picture actually, but the parquet headboards, again, I would argue, a great example of tessellation and sort of pattern effect. Again, going back to what we said at the start, but again, every piece of that wood is different. Its grain, its texture, its colour, all unique qualities within that building. And again, that backs up with what the project was about, which is to create that unique hotel experience. You can't buy this. Well, you can from us, but like, it's not off the shelf. It's not out of a catalogue. If the client saw where that wood had come from, I mean, it was just a pile of dirt. And within there, you've got like gold and gems and things that you can turn into brilliant objects and rooms. So yeah, just again, really simple, lovely ideas for how you find your room with the little room light top left. So we just took some light fittings and then just painted the numbers on by hand. So you've got that really lovely sense of sort of personal touch and artisan, and it's just great. It's just easy, and it was really cost effective to implement as well. So, which of course the clients are very concerned with when you've got 70 rooms or so. Yeah, down to then the stationery and getting it printed. And I think there's just a really good example there of how all the bits come together to then form a brand and a picture of the Pilgrim. And a few slides there of life online. Again, all really rich content and not much symmetry going on there, I'd argue, but yeah, taking websites into responsive platforms and devices, it's really handy, I guess, that the same content can be displayed differently and the experience enjoyed, whatever size, shape, media you're on. So last little insight from me was with Dark Woods, which is a coffee brand up in Huddersfield. They're all about single origin, so it's all about great quality, provenance. And we've been working on this job, well, with the client probably 3-4 years, maybe slightly longer. This work had taken about 12 to 18 months to actually undertake. A lot of kind of operational side that those guys were getting on with while we were working on with brand. So we created these wonderful illustrations, almost depicting characters from possibly the Dark Woods, forests, and countryside around Huddersfield. So this is an example of that. Again, really beautiful, unique artwork that is then the brands to own and to then use. So these were then put onto the packaging. Again, you can just see like the squirrel, the owl, the crow. I think we did about 8 of these in the end. But the packaging looks great and really starts to tell that story about the coffee. Colours might be a bit off there on screen, but yeah, beautiful bright yellow, really catch your eye. So again, for them, as a coffee brand where it's typically craft colour, it's brown paper, it's all the same, to come out with this is already starting to see great results. So people are interested, people see it on the shelves, people are buying it. It's great for us, great for them. So yeah, again, how that journey moves along from packaging to a zine that we did. So again, physical format for us is really important, where you can have a brochure in your hand, you can give someone something, because it still works, I think, and allows you to get all this lovely content out there. And yeah, again, life online is nicely mirrored, but maybe in some ways even improved, because as you're scrolling down these pages, the animations kind of come to life a bit, and we've managed to get some wonderful effects going on there. So again, these are things the illustrator was sort of really excited about when we said, well, we're going to do this, because it just adds more life and character and uniqueness into the project. So yeah, we also help put together some short films, and again, just trying to create a really rich environment, whether it's in physical space, online, or in print. So yeah, really good level of depth in our work. Yeah, down to the photography as well, and yeah, so full services, and there's lots of things there. I think come together really well to give a great job. And yeah, I think I'm probably more a fan of asymmetric stuff than symmetrical, but yeah. There we go. Thank you.